All I can say is wow. First, I'd like to congratulate Jimmy and Chad for your induction in the Hall of Fame and Janet's award for Janet. Very, very deserving. I'd like to congratulate all of the NASCAR inductees and all the people that voted for me. Thank you very much. I don't know if y'all are ready for this or not, but here we go. First, I want to introduce my children. Pam, Kenny, Ronald, and Donald. Would y'all stand up, please? Okay, your other half stand up. Bud Strickland married him. My daughter Pam, Khaki. You all can stand up. Then I want to talk about my brothers and sisters, which all of them, one are here. She had back surgery and called me crying because she couldn't make it. But Pat, my oldest sister, Eddie, Bobby, Tommy, Aggie, the one that had the back surgery, is not here, and Cindy. They're all here with their husbands and their children, and I really appreciate it. If I got some more to say about just a second. I want to acknowledge the France family. I want y'all to think about this. Without starting Big Bill, where would we be? What would be taking place right now? The France family has done wonders for our world, for the racing world. And I want to commend them and thank them for that, for giving me the opportunity to do something I love to do all my life. Thank you very much. Jimmy, I just can't thank you enough. Going back to my early days in racing, I got a person involved that was probably the best mentor that there is. That's my brother, Eddie Allison. I have 3 people on my list, and no offense, Ray Abraham or anybody else, 3 people on my list as the top mechanics I ever knew. Eddie Allison, Leonard Wood, and Banjo Matthews were the 3 guys that I said were the best. Guys that helped me, Ralph Moody took a liking to me, and he was the reason I got into the first factory Ford ride. And it was a 1-race deal at Daytona Beach. 1 race, they were going to let me drive a Holman Moody car. Well, I cut a tire and hit the wall in turn 1, and instead of trying to get off the wall, I kept the car on the wall so I wouldn't cause a bigger wreck, and it put me out of the race. Well, after the race, I was changing to my street clothes, and somebody came and got me and said, they want you in the Holman Moody office. I took a bigger breath, and I just took the in, and I said, oh no, here it is. So I go in there, and John Calley, which was second in command, Jack Pastano was the big boss, John Calley was next, and I don't think he cared for me or Bobby too much, but anyway, he said, sorry you had trouble. You want to drive Banjo Matthews' car at Rockingham? What? Yes, sir. He said, you have to run a 427 motor. I don't care if I got to run a 999 motor. It didn't make me any different. Well, anyway, put me with Banjo. I went and got him in the infield care center where he hanged out all the time. And the next day I drove him to Atlanta to a test. When we got to Atlanta to test, there was ice all the way across the back straightaway. Richard can attest to it. He'd been there and knows. Coming off turn 2, the old racetrack, the water would freeze going across. It was a big patch of ice. Well, Leroy was there running, and he went out and ran a little bit, and Banjo came over to me after we got the seat fitted and everything. He said, why don't you go out there and ride around a lap and see where you want to go? Well, I go out there. I run faster than Leroy ran. I didn't try to. I was driving the car. And I came in, and Banjo said, what did that feel like? I said, well, felt pretty good, I guess. How did I run? He said, don't worry about that. I just want to know how the car felt. And so then we go to Rockingham for the first race. It rains it out. Oh, no, here we go again. And they come over to me and said, you want to drive Banjo's car at Bristol? Gosh, yes. So anyway, to make a long story short, I got in Banjo's car for 14 races. And we went back to Rockingham, won the race at Rockingham. My very first Cup race was at Rockingham in '68. Bobby's first Cup race was his Super Speedway Cup race was '67 at Rockingham. So I tied you, Bobby. But anyway, you know, it's like I said, he was a mentor. He never once, like Eddie, he never once told me to do something. He would say it like, Donnie, why don't you try this, or why don't you try that? And that's the way I did it. Leonard Wood. I know everybody's heard it a jillion times, but he has got to be, sorry, Eddie, the smartest racing person ever in the world. Eddie, like Leonard, understood what a race car was supposed to do. When I went to drive for the Woods Brothers, I went up there to drive a modified in '67. It was a car that Leonard had put together, and we were getting ready to go over to Martinsville to run a test before the 100-lap race. And he looks over at me, and he says, it'll spin out. I said, what? He said, it'll spin out. Well, I go over there to run this car, and sure enough, we spun out. And so we take it home and to the shop, and we take the front spring out. We do a little work. We do change things around. We fix the throttle and everything. And I come back for the 100-lap race, and my brother Bobby's driving one of Jack Tant's cars. Everybody knows Jack Tant was a mechanic on Rick Hendricks's cars, the Flying 11. Bobby beat me in the 100-lap race. He won and I ran second. Well, we got a 300-lapper coming up, and I told Leonard, I'm going to change the left rear tire and get the sagger I want. They won't outrun us no more. Well, he couldn't find one. I thought I had one at home. I ran on my Super Modified. But anyway, Leonard and I are standing at the little shack. If you remember, Martinsville used to be a little shack where you signed in. And here comes Ron Harris's truck, trailer, and race car. And on that tire rack's one of them Hoosier tires. And I told Leonard, that's the tire we need. Well, he went and got Glenn. Glenn went and bought the tire. We put it on the left rear. And I won how many? I led 260-something laps of a 300-lap race. I lapped Rick Hendricks, and he run second. They wouldn't let me drive it no more. The next guy I want to say something about that I'm very indebted to was A.J. Foyt. You know, he ran a lot of races. Strangely enough, it seemed like I followed him in the Cup cars. He drove the Woods Brothers car before I did. He drove Banjo's car before I did. He drove Hoss's car before I did. And I won a hell of a lot more races than he did. But anyway, he gave me the opportunity to go to Indianapolis, and how that transpired in 1970 at Daytona, I said, AJ, why don't you let me drive one of your cars at Indy? He said, you really want to do that, don't you? I said, yes, I do. He said, okay, I'll call you. Well, I'd heard that before, and I didn't really expect to get a phone call, but I did. He said, I want you to come to Houston. He said, you and Dad are going to put your car together. So we went out there and we got it off the rack. It was a 1968 Coyote. Eagle. It was not a Coyote car. And Tony Sr. and I put it together, and I went to Indy. I had a bad first couple of weeks, but things got better. Had a heck of a race at the end of the race with Bobby Unser and Mario Andretti, and I finished fourth and won Rookie of the Year. I ran the full 500 miles, and the next guy that did that was Nigel Mansell 20 years later. So that's a pretty good record. But anyway, AJ, he used to stay on me pretty bad about being a taxi driver, and I told him, I said, you know, AJ, a taxi is no different than anything else. When you turn the steering wheel, the car's got to turn. And then 71, I like all race car drivers, I think, say, I'm going to win Indy 500. Well, in 71, when I had a heck of a time, I was in a Coyote and I was going to get bumped. So I got in a new car he had there, and in 2 laps of practice, I qualified that car. And I only had carburation day to get it ready to run. And the end of carburation day, only one race car on the whole track ever ran as fast as I ran. That was Allison Sr. And friends, if they hadn't made me change my car all back around race morning in Tech, I think I would have won that Indy 500. I don't ever know. I finished 6th, but and I thank AJ for giving me that opportunity. Hoss Ellington, what can you say? He was the owner of that #1 car they show all the time. That everybody says one of the most important races in NASCAR. It is the most important. Mr. France. The whole eastern seaboard was snowed in, so everybody watched that race, and how could you ask for anything better? 3 of the guys that crashed in the first 29 laps, 2 of them ended up crashing the last lap. And then, as Ken Squire so neatly spoke about, fought. I never fought. I don't care what that thing, I never touched the man, he never touched me. If he had, I'd have probably killed him. Anyway, we're not going to talk a whole lot more about that. I don't have too much, don't worry. After I got out of driving myself, I helped a lot of people. I helped them when I drove even and stuff. I mean, it was something I got from Ralph Moody in the early days on, and my brother Eddie. My brother Eddie was very, very good at explaining to you things to try to do on that racetrack to see if it wouldn't help you out. 99% of the time it did. I went to work. My first deal was I ran Joe Nemechek's Busch cars his first year when he won Rookie of the Year. And I didn't finish out the full year, but he did win that Rookie of the Year. And I was really, really lucky to work with some extremely good young men. And to name a few, #1, Joey Logano. #2, Trevor Bayne. #3, Regan Smith. #4, John Hunter Nemechek. And this next guy, he didn't get the opportunity to show what he could do. He left here too soon. But I'm very good friends with his father, and a lot of people didn't know this kid really drove that much. That's Ricky Hendricks. They asked me to help him, try to help him at Darlington. He was in a truck. And so I gladly did. The minute I met the boy, the young man, I was impressed. He was very, very, very polite. He respected his elders, and he wanted to drive that race car worse than anything that I knew that he wanted to do. And we started talking, and I showed him some things that I was shown about Darlington, and he was, for a better word, hauling ass. And his teammates beat him for the pole that day. I don't know how he did it. I would like to find out, but I don't know how. But anyway, we got beat for. We were going to sit on the pole, and he got beat for the pole. Jack Sprague. And I told Ricky. Ricky was devastated, and I told him, I said, "Don't worry, Ricky. You'll be leading this race in a couple laps or 5 laps." How many laps did it take for him to get to the lead, Rick? 2. I'm glad you said that because I know it was 2. But anyway, it's heartfelt, the pain of losing somebody that young with that much opportunity. But I'm going to tell you something, friends, he would have made a good one. Now I'm going to back up just a little bit and talk about one of the other young guys I helped, Joey Logano. Friends, he was 12 years old, driving an Allison Legacy car at Anderson, South Carolina. And we built, my sons, Kenny and Ronald Donald, built all the Legacy cars. And we tested it before we ever put it on the market. And it didn't have a front sway bar. And anyway, the car always pushed off the corner. No matter what you change, it would push off the corner. Joey kept saying, "I'm too tight off the corner, I'm too tight off the corner." So I got a brainstorm. I'm going to take all the sagger out of the front. We ran 1.25 inches in the front, 1.5 inches in the back. I'm going to take all the sagger out. Well, I didn't have a left side tire that would do that, but I had a right side tire that was 1/4 inch smaller than the right front. I put it on there, set the air and everything, and I told Joey, I said, "Now you watch this a lap or two till the tire gets worn the other way." He goes out. Now he's, I think, 12 years old, maybe not 13. Second lap, he come on the radio and said, "Buddy, that's it. That's what we're looking for." And ever since then, that's been what's happened. And he was probably 13 and a half, and I told his father, Tom and I are very, very close. I said, "He's ready to go to a late model, driving-wise, if you want to." I don't know physically if he can. He's a little skinny to run anyway. But the rest is history. I've been involved with him, his family a long time, the beautiful people, and good race car drivers you'll find. Okay. Thank you, Jimmy Creed. Jimmy Creed, the guy that gave me my ring, he wrote my book, Donnie Allison, as I recall. I met him. A guy in Alabama introduced us, said he works for a newspaper, he wants to write your book. I don't want to write a book. He says, yeah, he wants to do it. So he came and he talked to me and told me what he wanted to do. I said, let's do it. So we did, and we've been very, very successful with it. Thank you a lot, Jimmy. He helps me all the time. If he comes up and says something about me, it probably came from me, so don't worry about it. Finally, but not last, I want to say something about the most important person in my life. It's my wife, Pat Allison. She's been the backbone, the whipping girl. She's been everything you could think of, and the best mother a man could ever want for his children. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We've been married 63 years, and I was corrected on this, how to say this. We've never spent one night apart because of an argument. Not many of y'all can say that. Thank you, Pat. I love you. that's about the end of it. And the only thing else I would like to say is thank you, and thank you.